Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's Twitch stream. I'm running a little behind, so still in the background whilst I talk to you, just organising my windows so you can't see all my stuff I don't want to share. I have got a script that I run that positions all my windows. Puts a Chrome browser here, it puts one with the chat there, opens up a terminal, and it's all good. Except if I run it with the wrong window focused, then it puts my email all over the screen. Oh, anyway. But I thought I'd start streaming whilst I just fix up all my windows before I start showing my main screen. Hope you're all well. Do say hi in the chat or in the comments. So this is my weekly hacking on Node-RED. So actually developing Node-RED, the core itself, rather than using Node-RED. I say it every week. I'm sure the regulars will be tired of me hearing it, but for the newcomers, just to understand what we're here to do. It's really just an opportunity for me to share some of my development work on Node-RED with you, with the world. And I think particularly this month, if you are familiar, it's Hacktoberfest this month, which is a program sponsored by DigitalOcean to try and encourage more people to contribute to open source. Now, it's had a bit of a rocky start this year with some people doing lots of spammy pull requests, but we have... so they've now made it opt-in, as in repositories have to opt in to whether people raising pull requests against that repository will get rewarded through the Hacktoberfest program. We have enabled the Node-RED repositories, the core repository, the nodes, the website. So, October is a great month if you want to make some sort of contribution, whether it's to the website, whether it's to Node-RED core, to any of the nodes we maintain. Do just come and have a shout, chat to us. If you're interested in getting started, it's a great chance. So with Hacktoberfest, I think if you get 4 pull requests merged in any qualifying repository, then I think you get a T-shirt or something from DigitalOcean or some swag, or either way, it's a good excuse to start contributing. But all we ask is we want to make sure the pull requests are meaningful, and people aren't just gaming it, aren't doing one word spelling corrections or minor grammatical changes. We're looking for good quality contributions and hopefully sustained contributions beyond Hacktoberfest itself. So there we go. So what are we up to tonight? Hi, Melody. Good to see you in the chat. So what are we doing tonight? So for those following the project, we released the beta of 1.2 last week, and it has been pretty quiet in terms of feedback. There's been a couple odd bits. There is one issue, which, to be honest, I think predates 1.2, but may as well have a look at it. But because we're in this beta phase and a lot of the technical work's done, we're just kind of letting it get feedback from the community. I'm just taking a break from diving into development work on the next feature. I've got a bunch of other stuff coming up that needs my attention. So thankfully, Steve in the forum mentioned this bug with the template node, which I said I think predates 1.2, but it feels like a perfect little thing to spend the next 50 minutes or so looking at and hopefully coming to a resolution on. So let me get going. Hi, just curious if you knew of beta installs. Well, we've had a few people in the forum confirm they've been running it to success. We don't get stats. Do we get stats, actually? I don't know if NPM provide stats. Certainly we get stats on latest. I don't know if we can get download stats on other versions. But that's a good question. I know, yeah. well, maybe we'll go, if there's time at the end, I'll go digging. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't get a lot back from NPM in terms of stats or any information about who's actually installing it and that sort of thing. It's kind of reliant on getting feedback via the forum, and like I said, a few people have commented that it's looking good. So my brain is still just trying to gear up and get my workspace set up whilst you'll come and have a look at it. So what I am doing in the background before I share stuff is just getting Node-RED running and up. Dun, dun, dun. Right. One thing I have fixed, which regular viewers of the Twitch stream will have seen me probably mutter under my breath and curse about. Oh, I'll tell you what I've not got anywhere. Oh, yes, I have. Right, I think I've got my workspace in order. Let's start sharing. Here we are. So those who follow regularly will know we use Grunt as our task runner, and we have this. In fact, we have this task Grunt Dev, which runs Node-RED. It builds it, runs it, but it then runs a nodemon task, which watches for any changes to the source code and then automatically rebuilds the editor code or restarts Node-RED if we edit any of the code. Now, if you've been in previous streams when I've been editing core code, quite a few times I've saved a file in the core and it's noticed the change, so it's stopped Node-RED, but it hasn't restarted it. I've had to save the file twice. Anyway, last week I finally got to the bottom of that. It turns out the version of nodemon we had, because we use Grunt, we'd used a module that wraps nodemon as a Grunt task, and unfortunately that's no longer maintained, and it had a very old version of nodemon. So did a bit of work last week to take out that middleman, and so now we use nodemon directly, and we're on the very latest version of nodemon, and it's made that problem go away. So now whenever I save, things restart as expected, and it's the little things in life that just make things better. Right, enough preamble. Right, we're running. Let's go. Here we are, loaded up. So the bug. Let me just get a clean tab, and it's to do with the template node. Just going to hit deploy so I don't have to keep re-adding it. So here we have a template node. Now, all nodes have a description field, which can be documentation for the node. And this documentation uses the markdown syntax for formatting. We can do lots of cool stuff. Anyway, it's markdown. And what we have is this expand button, which opens up a bigger editor, bigger window. And once you've expanded it, this button is the toggle preview button. There's zoom in for you. Toggle preview. And clicking that then gives you the rendered view on this side. Just trying to be helpful so people can help visualize the markdown as they're writing it. Okay, but the key thing is just follow the sequence. Here we have an editor. I click the expand button, and then I have the I button here to open up the preview. Okay, that's what's meant to happen. But when we look at the template node, if we change its syntax highlighting to markdown, and we click this expand button, it opens up the editor, but notice it's got another expand button here. And it's when we click that, we get the toggle preview. And in fact, So that was the bug report. Why, if that syntax highlight is set to markdown, do we have to click the expand button once and then click it again before we get the toggle preview? So that's the bug. That's what we're going to be tracking down, or at least understanding what's going on. Okay, hopefully that's clear. So a few more bits I want to sort of draw your attention to, which gives some sense of what's going on here. Let me try and zoom to... If we go back to the node description, we've got the text editor and we've already got the markdown toolbar across the top with its expand button. And notice the title bar of the edit dialog is edit template node. When I hit the expand, okay, there we are. Notice we've gone down a level from edit template node. We've now gone down into the markdown editor, and it's the markdown editor which has all that formatting toolbar, and it's got the preview. Okay, so template node, one level down into the markdown editor. Hi Alex, good to see you in the chat. Now when we go back to the template editor, when I hit this expand button, it's gone into the text editor, not the markdown editor. Okay, but it's got the markdown toolbar, but it's the text editor. I wonder if yeah, so it's got the markdown toolbar, except it hasn't because it's got the expand button. If I click the expand button, you can see the dialog slides because it's closed and opened another. Now you can see in the sort of stack of editors, we were at the template node, we've gone into the text editor, and then we've gone into the markdown editor. So and it's the markdown editor which has the preview button, not the text editor. So I can sort of see, I don't know why it's taking that path. Out of interest, if we change this, say, to a mustache format and hit expand, well, there it takes us to the text editor, which is what you'd expect because it's text. We don't have the markdown toolbar, and there's no expand button. So it only seems to be if the syntax highlight mode is set to markdown, it does look like we've got some code in there which is adding in the markdown toolbar, but it's the text editor. And that's what's puzzling. It's almost as if we shouldn't be going to the text editor for this. We should be going straight into the markdown editor. Okay, so hopefully that's a clear sort of description of the problem. So what we're going to do is I'm trying to do a little bit of a tour of the different editors we have. Because again, if I fire up, say, the buffer, sorry, a typed input, and I've set the type to the buffer option, then we have the buffer editor. So again, you can see in the title bar, we've gone down into an editor of a particular type. And this is a custom editor that helps you generate the hex of a buffer. So we've got a number of different built-in editors for different types of data to try and help. There's one for JSON, there's the JSON Arta expression editor, and there's the text and the markdown ones. So here we are in the source tree, which I can't zoom this part of my ACE window. But where are we? We are in editor client, source, JS, UI editors. And you can see there's an editor for buffer type, JSON Arta expressions, JavaScript for the function node, JSON, markdown, and text. And those editors are sort of self-contained things that register themselves. Well, let's make this big so you can see. They register themselves with the editor saying, if something wants to edit some content of type _markdown, just a convention, they're prefixed with underscores because they live in the same namespace as node types, technically. Whether they should or not is a different matter, but that's what they do at the moment. We register the type, for markdown and its definition. And its definition is an object that defines a bunch of, collapsed one window too many. No, I've killed that window. How strange. Let's try again. Yeah, okay. So the definition is that there's a function that provides a show function, and that gets called when it wants to build an instance of the editor, and it gets passed in an options object, which passes in the information about the actual value to be displayed, and when we finish editing, a callback function, and yada yada, a whole bunch of interesting stuff. And in fact, here we are in the markdown one. The editor can also provide a toolbar. Is that true or is that unique? Anyway, and here you can see the logic for how we've done the markdown content assist. So that's all goodness. But it's the template node we are interested in to begin with, to see why is it behaving differently based on the syntax highlighting option in that node. So template 80-template.html is the template node. In fact, straight up you can see here is the list of syntax highlighting formats we support, and then there's markdown. Now, okay, so here we have, let's see what this is doing. So the button in the node is this one, the node template expand editor. So when it gets clicked, we get the current content, the current text in the template node, and then we call this red.editor.edit text. So this invokes the text editor widget with a bunch of options. And now this is interesting. So we pass in, we set the mode, which is kind of the syntax highlighting mode, to the option, the current selected value in that dropdown. So if that was markdown, we're going to be calling red editor edit text with the mode set to markdown. So that's the thread we'll continue exploring in a moment. But just to show you what else is there. So we also pass in the current value that we want to edit, how wide we want the editor to be. So that can control whether it goes full screen or does it just replace the current width of the editor. And typically for these editors, the idea is you're trying to get more space. So they go, well, width infinity means go all the way to the left-hand edge. Then it supports cursor position. So that's if you are, you're in the middle of editing this, and let's say you've got the cursor at the beginning of the word payload. If you can see that. So my cursor is at the beginning of the word payload. When I expand, then it puts the cursor at the beginning of payload. Just little things like that which try and help improve the edit experience. And then the callback. So when the editor is closed, pull out the updated text. And anyway, but like I said, the thread we want to explore is this red.editor.edit text. So let's go over to editor.js in the core of Node-RED. And this is a big file. This needs splitting up, but it has got a bunch of utility functions. So edit JavaScript, edit expression, edit JSON, edit markdown, edit text, edit buffer. And they all call their corresponding show type editor. So I showed you just now the markdown editor, which has its type of _markdown. Well, in this instance, by calling, edit markdown, that will call show type editor, and it will show the _markdown. It will show the editor registered with the type of _markdown and just passes through the options. Now, the one we care about right now is the text editor, show type editor for _text. So let's go find show type editor. So show type editor for a given type, essentially it checks that we know about that custom edit type. It's one we recognize. If it is, then it edit stack is basically the stack of edit dialog windows. Each time the window sort of slides closed and reopens, we're building up this stack. So it pushes that pushes this editor onto the stack, sets the title, sets an on-close callback so that, so we update stuff, yada yada, and then we call that editor's show function. So for the template node calling edit text, it's going to come through here and it's going to end up calling show on the text editor. So let's go have a look at that. So hopefully you're following this through. So here we're now looking. This is the text editor, custom editor, and so we're saying it's going to call the show function. Now, what's curious, what I'm not seeing here is, okay, so I'm just talking this through as much for me to get this right as well, because I'm not, again, as often with these issues, I'm not seeing what I was expecting to see, which made me think this would be a quick fix. So when we edit the template node, and when the syntax highlight is, for example, mustache, that means, let me just double check this. Yeah, node input format is the select box for the mustache, HTML, JavaScript, markdown. So we're going to set this mode option to whatever we've got selected in that select box. And if it's set to mustache and we hit this button, we get into the text editor and there's no toolbar. But if that mode is set to markdown and we hit expand, we get the markdown toolbar. So that's the bit of logic we're looking for. Why does that markdown toolbar appear? So we've got just scanning through. Okay, so template, I mean, this is like with a custom node. So this template determines the contents of the editor, and I know it's hard to see because it's all on one line, but that is just a single row with the text editor in it. There is no toolbar there. So the thing is to look through, where does options.mode get used at all? And we use it in one place, and we use it. Okay, we're homing in. Yes. So here we have the open function, which gets called when we're opening the edit dialog. It builds up the UI, and in doing so, it calls red.editor.createEditor. So this is the utility function we provide for embedding the ACE edit component into any bit of the UI. So it hides, or at least it tries to hide, the underlying ACE edit component APIs. ACE does leak through a bit because the mode name is expected to be an ACE mode, but the key thing is we are specifying a mode of ACE/mode/markdown in this one scenario. Okay, so let's now switch back and go and look at what red.editor.createEditor is doing. So we are back in editor.js, and create editor is here. So this is the thing that is calling all the low level ACE APIs to set up the edit dialog. Now, what I'm expecting to find in here, and here we have it. We have got some special code in here that says if the mode is set to markdown, then we use the markdown build toolbar function to give us that edit toolbar. Right, and then right, so that adds the toolbar. We've then got this interesting block which says if expandable is not explicitly set to false, this is what's adding that expand button. And that expand button, when it gets clicked, is what then goes into the edit markdown. So this is where, so we've gone into the text editor. The text editor is creating an ACE edit component. Because the ACE edit component's mode is set to markdown, it's automatically adding the markdown toolbar. And because we've not explicitly said not to make it expandable, it is adding the expand button. Right. And then because I'm just running through this in my head. Okay. So let's look at those different parts. So when we select markdown in this list and expand, so we are in the text editor. It's pulled the toolbar, this set of buttons over on the left, from the markdown editor, and it's added that expand button to open up the markdown editor from here. Then when it opens up the markdown editor, let's just remind myself again how this works. So so the preview button, so if we go into this one, this preview button, that button isn't part of the markdown toolbar. That is part of the markdown editor window as a whole. So that means, in fact, there's no, without copying a lot of code, there is no way, if that's set to markdown, to click that button and for this to be the preview icon if this is the text editor. So, unrolling all of this a bit, what we can actually do to fix this, rather than rely on the editor adding in, having this special awareness of markdown and adding in the toolbar, for the template node we can ignore that, and what we can do is put some logic into the template node to handle markdown correctly at this point, and rather than call edit text, it could call edit markdown instead. That's one route. So yeah, one option is have the template node go the other path and call edit markdown if it recognizes the mode as markdown. Another option, which in some ways might be preferable, he says, as I sort of frantically think through for what reason this might not be preferable, is in editor where we've called here where we've got edit text and we just blindly call edit text, we could divert it at this point, and that way anyone calling edit text with a markdown mode would get the rich markdown editor instead, and which would fix this issue for everyone. So if we say options.mode, let me just check edit text. Yeah. So if options.mode actually equals markdown, then we can divert this to the markdown editor. Okay, does that make sense? So we had a couple of choices. We either had the template node have this logic to either call the markdown editor or the text editor, but it feels better at this point that if you say I want to edit text and my mode is markdown, that will give you the rich markdown editor for free, with the preview mode built in. I think that feels more useful as a utility function that other things can reuse. So if I reload now, so syntax highlight set to mustache, the default, so it's text, and hopefully you can see, yep, that is the text editor. Now if we go and select markdown and try again, brilliant. So it is now opened up the markdown editor with the preview in line, all looking good. Looking through the others, so question, is there already an editing mode selection helper that you can pass to? No, there isn't. At the moment, whoever's calling, well, I have found on the whole, apart from this almost edge case of text that might be markdown or might not, in pretty much every other instance where we use these type editors, the caller knows what type they're dealing with already. So the function node knows it's JavaScript. The typed inputs, which they know the user has said this is JSON or this is a JSON outer expression. So those things can call straight in. But I have to admit, I've always felt, this doesn't feel scalable to have hard-coded functions for all those different types. But again, it is almost a bound list. It's not an infinite long list of the different types of editors we will have in Node-RED. These are the types that we've needed. There's never been a suggestion of any more, so I'm not worried. If at worst case there are 2 or 3 more, then this becomes a slightly longer list. But there may be a need to have a more generic thing. And in fact, there is because at the moment we have got different functions for editing nodes. So if you want to edit a node, as in a regular flow node, it calls this edit function. If it's a config node, you have to call edit config. If it's a subflow, edit subflow. If it's a group, it's edit group. And in fact, the arguments you pass, and this has caught me out before, it's a bit infuriating. The function signature for edit dialog and edit config node dialog are completely different. Whereas for all 4 of those, it would feel much neater to know that I could always just call edit and I pass it the node that I want to be edited, and it works out what it is and it delegates to the right dialog, the right function. But anyway, that's a bit of refactoring for a different day. For now, we've actually fixed the issue I wanted to fix, and this feels like a good fix that will apply to anyone else who, any other nodes that use the edit text helper and might have set that to markdown. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to ship that. let's just get that done. If I get this done now, then that's the hard work done, and then I may be able to wrap up a little earlier. So let's just review the changes. We've added in that logic around the mode. We pass into edit text. Comment, use markdown editor if edit text called with MD mode. Good. Commit that. Git push. Excellent. And that is now fixed in 1.2. As I say, that's a long-standing issue. That's going to have been in since 1.0, if not earlier. But again, one of those things you wouldn't necessarily notice until you stumble over it. So yeah, always good to get those things tidied up. Yeah, you asked about how we use the other editors. So the main... Let me just get Node-RED running again in the background. So the main place we use like the JSON and the JSON editors are with the typed input widget we provide. So yeah, if I open up an inject node, so in here, when I select JSON and hit expand, it opens up the JSON editor, which lets me edit the raw JSON, or gives me a visual editor where I can edit. Oh, we need to make this a bit more keyboard accessible, but yeah, need to make that. Well, that's going to be a whole other project, making that keyboard accessible. But, and if I switch back to the edit tab, you can see that's the raw JSON and the visual editor. Yeah. Anyway, but that's the JSON type editor. The JSON expression type gives us this editor where I can put in an expression, whatever it might be. Oh, yada. But this provides inline help for all the different JSON expression functions, and a test panel where, given this expression, I can paste in an example message down here and it will show me the result down here. So and JSON is great. If you've not played with it, it can be a bit intimidating. It is not JavaScript in terms of syntax, but it lets you do funky things like very quickly just get the sum of an array, or I don't know. It does a whole load of interesting stuff. But it all comes out of that typed input. So the typed input is one of our common widgets that lets you define all the different predefined types that can be in that drop-down list. So the built-in ones let you pick message properties, flow and global, context properties, string, number, boolean, and JSON. So for the JSON type, it defines an expand function, which is what, if the type has an expand function, that's what causes this button on the right-hand side to be shown. That is the expand button. And when that's clicked, it does the work. And here you can see the call to red.edit.edit.json. So again, this, in the context of this type, we know it's always going to be JSON we're editing at that point in time, so it can call edit.json directly. Regular expressions, dates, and here's the JSON one. Same deal, expand function, and it calls through to edit expression. One of the interesting challenges, if you like, is both JSON and JSON can be split over multiple lines. Problem is, this input in HTML, a input can only be a single line, and new line characters will get stripped out if you try and set its value to include new lines. which can be a bit of a challenge. So, if we put in foo, what am I doing? Just a random bit of JSON, but over with a few properties. So we have this format JSON button, which gives it nicely formatted over multiple lines. When I hit done, you'll note in here, it's actually stripped out all the white space and it's generated the compact. So the nice thing with JSON is you can lose new lines because white space is irrelevant. And if there were a new line inside any of the strings, they would be escaped, so they wouldn't show as new lines. And when I re-expand that, we can use JSON formatting to give a nice formatted view. So there's no problem switching between a single line version and a multi-line version. In the case of a JSON expression, the same isn't quite as true. Because I can never remember good examples of big JSON expressions, I can recommend jasonarter.org and try.jasonarter.org. But in fact, let's go jump over to their documentation. They've got, let's find some examples. The fact it's Turing complete. So yeah, you can write whole Turing complete functions in I have no idea what that function is even doing. Anyway, I'm intrigued now. It says produces this if you're interested. I want to see what this big expression does. Well, that's crazy. So this JSON expression has created a sine wave in an array of ASCII strings. I mean, that's cool. But the point is, it's multiple lines. So what we've had to do is, if we grab that, paste it in. Now, what we do is, when we switch into the editor, we actually substitute new lines for tab characters because tabs have no particular meaning. It's just a different white space character. Now that will trip things up if you genuinely want a tab inside a string, but if you want that, you should do it \t. It should be escaped properly. So I think I seem to remember I convinced myself we were safe doing this, but we have to switch between \t and \n. And then when we go to the expanded view, I ended up writing a formatter for JSONarter, which tries to do a sensible job. And in fact, you can see here it isn't quite getting the indentation right. A different bug for a different day. But yeah, these are some of the interesting challenges doing these expression editors when it needs to go in between a single line text input and a multi-line one. For those who are familiar with JSONarter, you may notice in 1.2, we now properly syntax highlight comments, which we didn't before, because comments are a relatively new addition to JSONarter. We do a better job of not mistaking a divide symbol for the start of a regular expression. That was a fun bug to try and fix. Interesting. For some reason, I'm not going to get distracted by oddities in the syntax highlighting. I've gone off the rails. Point being, so we've got these built-in typed editors. The JSONarter one, in fact, here's the binary bin one, which calls the edit buffer. And yeah, I think those are the main ones. Okay, I could keep wittering on and going around in circles, but the main point is we've fixed now the template node. We've fixed the bug we wanted to fix. That's good. As it stands, there aren't any other confirmed bugs reported against 1.2. There is an interesting one around a user who spun up the beta, and it's appeared to rename the project they were using, which I can't explain at all. The original report suggested it just renamed their flow file, which is one thing, but to rename an entire project means copying a whole directory structure on disk, and there is no code for doing that in there. So I'm reserving a call of user error on that one, that they may have accidentally picked up a different project, but I don't know. Something odd has gone on there for sure. But either way, unless we can reproduce that and actually understand what's caused it, there aren't any other outstanding issues. Mauricio, you did suggest you can't just rename the root folder. Yeah, a user could have renamed it, but the point was when they then went back to 113, it went back to the old project, so it couldn't have just been a rename. The old project must be there as well. But anyway, I've asked some questions on the forum just to try and understand what's going on. But yeah, very strange. Mauricio, I know you mentioned to me on Slack you thought you had seen a hang-up using groups again. Now that we know there are a bunch of issues in 1.1.3 in the current release, when you're editing groups around copying and pasting nodes, and nodes not always ending up in the group when you drag them on. Basically, there was just some faulty logic in that area that could cause some nasty hang-ups, and those are all the ones I've been able to hunt down and confirm are now fixed. And it was a nice issue, what that turned out to be, because it was what turned out, rather than being an obscure edge case, it was an obvious gap in the logic that I could reason about, and the fix, rather than the fix being I don't know why it fixes it, but it does. The fix was one I fully understood why the gap it was plugging, and why that was could cause a hang up. So anyway, we'll wait and see. My goal is to get 1.2 published later this week. I say that's my goal. Aside from any last minute issues, the main outstanding items now are sort of documentation, release blog post, release video, that type of stuff. But I've got a bit of a busy week because it's the Node-RED Tokyo or Node-RED Japan conference this coming Saturday. So it's free to register. It's on this coming Saturday. For us in Europe, it starts quite early in our morning, but I'm doing the closing keynote, which is at a respectable 9:30 in the morning for me here in the UK. It promises to be a really good event. It's free to register. If you're interested, please do register to show support. The talks will be in a mixture of English and Japanese. But my point is being, I've got to get my talk ready for that. So that unfortunately has got to take precedence to getting 1.2 final out, because a bit more of a deadline to have my talk ready for 9:30 on Saturday. So we'll see. I think I've finished writing the talk. It's just slides and the like. But if I can get that knocked out in the next day or two, then we'll get the release video done in the second half of the week, and we can end the week with a 1.2 final release. But these are the joys. The alternative being I save doing the final release till next Monday evening, and we have a little release party. I hit publish live on the live stream. We'll see. Maybe not. I think doing a release, I have a checklist of tasks to run through to make sure I update all the right things in the right order. I don't know. I did do a release stream earlier in the summer of a maintenance release, but I did do that. I didn't do it on the regular Monday slot. I live streamed middle of the day, midweek, when I was doing the release, because I thought it'd be interesting to walk through the process. So that's in the archive. I think, and that was quite good because no one was there live. So I could focus on the checklist whilst talking through it and sharing the process. But I don't think, as you say, risking the demo gods, yes. And I doing a major release of the project on a live stream is perhaps a step further than I'm willing to go at this point. We'll see. We'll see how I get on through the week. But keep an eye out for 1.2. Have a look at Node-RED Japan conference if that's interesting. I say there's lots of interesting talks. Some more than just mine will be in English. I'm hoping, I don't know, but I'm hoping recordings will be available afterwards. If you've not followed it, the Node-RED Japan user group has been around since very early on in the life of the project, and they've been doing, they do monthly meetups. They're a really active, vibrant community. Obviously close ties to Hitachi are also a major contributor to the project. It's really good to see their event happening. The original plan was I would be out there presenting in person, but sadly, and for very obvious reasons, not happening this year. But hopefully we'll run the event again next year or the year after, and I'll be able to justify the travel. Otherwise, it raises a good question whether we ought to have a Node-RED conference of some sort in the Western world, in more predominantly in English. It's one we've kicked around the idea of trying to do. Could we do an in-person event in London, which is obviously convenient for Dave and myself, just up the road. But in-person events aren't happening anytime soon. So doing an online-only event, maybe an afternoon of talks from the community about cool stuff going on in Node-RED, that's something we really should think about trying to set up and trying to do. I'm sure whether it's a one-off or whether we try and do like a monthly meetup or a quarterly, 3 hours every quarter, one evening, just getting 2 or 3 presenters each month, sharing interesting stuff they're doing with Node-RED. I think there's probably almost suddenly going to be an audience for that. It's just, as ever, working out logistics, finding the time to organise. But certainly something to look at. It looks like the build for the latest beta image of Node-RED Docker failed. Yeah, that's not one that's one I'll poke Dave about. That's one he looks after. So yeah, we'll see what's happening. We've only recently sorted out doing the Docker build for beta images. So I don't know why that would fail, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, no, you're right. Doing more to promote what Node-RED is, how it can be used across industry. We hear stories of how it's used in all manners of industries, all manners of environments. It's really good to see. The challenge is just spreading the word and getting more of these publicized. So something else we've talked about doing is getting more use cases published on the Node-RED website or on the OpenJS Foundation blog, or some venue that we can have more interesting case studies to share with the world about how Node-RED's being used. So yeah, all this stuff, it just needs, the main challenge is just the arms and legs it takes to produce the content, to do the the legwork to gather the information, to do the research, and that is just a perennial issue with us and any open source project. Just there's always plenty we could be doing, and getting the prioritization right is the challenge. But there we are. 2 minutes to 9 o'clock. I'm going to wrap up rather than continue gabbling on for another 20 minutes, because I've got to start writing my slides. I've written the talk for Saturday, but I've got to put some slides together as well. So I was going to crack on with that tonight. Partner with industry journalists, get them to speak to you. Yeah, so I've got friends at Gartner who, in fact, Gartner have just done an interesting paper on low-code platforms, more commercial platforms than open source. I know I can get access to it through the right channels in IBM. I just haven't found my way through it yet. But yeah, we've got friends at Gartner who've got friends at various analyst firms who are fans of Node-RED, and yeah, they do sort of tell us they do see Node-RED coming up from time to time in the conversations they have with their clients. And yeah, we need to start farming that and start gathering the use cases and gathering the stories. It's well, Hitachi have done they do talk quite a bit about their use of Node-RED, both on LinkedIn and in conference talks and the like. So Hitachi have been really good. I'd love to hear more from other parts. Again, this is one of the challenges with the Node-RED Japan user group, because it's mostly Japanese. We don't get much sort of cross pollination between their user group and sort of the main community that our discourse forum and the like. So that's going to be part of what I hope we're able to do on the back of this weekend's event, is invite more of those individuals from the Japan user group to connect to us and share their stories with us, so we can share it with the wider world, what the really cool stuff they're doing with Node-RED. Anyway, I'm going to go. I want a cup of tea. So, thank you very much. Nice little issue we fixed tonight. Keep an eye out for 1.2. Sign up for Node-RED Japan if you want an early start on Saturday morning. Otherwise, I'll be back next Monday with something to do with Node-RED. Look forward to it. Thanks, everyone. Good to chat. If you're on YouTube, do subscribe. We'll have the release video up when we do the release. If you're on Twitch, give us a follow and get the notifications on for when I go live. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Bye.